This is Unique Smiles, the Facial Paralysis Podcast, and I'm your host, Brian April. Welcome, everybody, to Unique Smiles, the Facial Paralysis Podcast, which you can now catch all episodes on Apple and Google Podcasts and YouTube by searching Unique Smiles or the Facial Paralysis Podcast. Today, my guest is Steven Maldonado, who has facial paralysis from Moebius Syndrome. He's currently serving on the Moebius Syndrome Foundation Board of Directors. And Steven, thank you so much for taking time out today.
Yeah, hey, Brian. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks a lot.
Glad to have you. So first and foremost, for those who don't know, what is Moebius?
Moebius syndrome is a condition from birth. It affects the 6th and 7th cranial nerves. So usually they're either missing altogether or they're just not completely developed in individuals. And so the telltale sign for Moebius is usually no expressions. The person can't smile. The person can't make, any kind of facial expressions or cues. They can't blink. They can't wink. Those kind of things. And really with Moebius, there are different levels. So, for example, someone can be, just really have the facial paralysis and no other symptoms. Others might have a little more things like trouble with breathing, trouble with balance. They might be missing hands or other limbs. So it really does vary in severity.
Are there any known causes? Do they know what triggers this?
So right now, they don't know why this occurs. I know there's research being done to try and figure out, is it a gene or is it something else, maybe at conception that happens. But yeah, right now there's no known cause for it.
Is it always bilateral?
So actually, it can be either bilateral or unilateral. So one side can be affected. In my case, I only have one side that's affected as far as my lower part of my face, but my eyes both do not close or blink on their own. So yeah, it can be either or.
Let's start with you. Tell me a little bit about you growing up. What was life like as a child dealing with Moebius?
Yeah, so I'd say growing up, going through kindergarten and through 5th grade, I would say, I really didn't have that much of a normal childhood. I mean, it was normal, but I didn't it wasn't really different. Like I felt like I grew up. I had friends. I went to school. Had teachers seemed to like me. I did fine as far as grades. So I think overall, I felt like I grew up pretty normally. And of course, there was bullying. There was kids that would kind of make comments or I guess single me out because they saw I was different in a way. But overall, I seemed to always make friends and be able to adjust and enjoy grade school. I'd say really where it got a little hard was 6th grade because actually I moved to a different school district to start 6th grade. So I went from having friends I had known since I was a kid to really being the new kid and having to really start fresh. And that was pretty difficult because I was always sort of a quiet, shy kid. So trying to make friends and just trying to be the extrovert was hard. And on top of that, I was kind of self-conscious about my appearance and, how I came off to people. So, those were some hard years. But then high school, a little the same, but it definitely got better. And, as I made friends and found myself, it definitely got better.
Now, did they do anything in particular that helped you kind of deal with either the bullying or just with Moebius in general growing up?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to have both, a mother and a father and a grandmother who were very pivotal in my my younger years. And yeah, I think their stance was, yeah, you're a little different, but at the same time, you can try things you want to try. You can go out there and see the world and figure out the world. That if you're fine, just do that. And they always push me to try things, to get out there and make friends, meet people. And I think that was great because I think it sort of allowed me to feel comfortable, at home. And from there, I think I had a good foundation to kind of springboard on, into social settings at school and what have you. And of course, it was still hard, but I think having that support system and having the outlook of, okay, well, my parents think, I should go out there and just be myself. So I'm going to do that and see what happens. And I think it's been great so far.
So, what advice would you give to parents who have a young child with Moebius?
Yeah. So I would say do your best to let them see that yes, they might have a difference, and they might number one, it's okay to see that and accept that. And number two, I would say let them just go out there and try things, and let them try out for the soccer team, or let them try band, or just let them be who they want to be. And of course it's okay to do things if you want to try and just help them as far as maybe talking to teachers, talking to the school, and just setting them up for a good school environment. But at the same time, I would say I'm very much a proponent of just let them get out there and experience life. And I think they'll find that yeah, there's some bumps, but at the same time, those bumps will help them grow and enjoy the journey.
That's great advice. Now, you talked a little bit about social settings. I know you went to Texas A&M for college. What was your experience like with that, and maybe with dating?
Sure. So I'll start with college. So yeah, actually, I went to Texas A&M for my graduate degree, and I have to say that was a little intimidating, just because. So I was studying business, and business is very much a presentation type field. People have to look their best and just present themselves in a way that lets people see that they're going to be good employees, they're going to do good work, they're going to be valuable members of the team. So I have to say, having a facial difference, that it was tough to really not overthink myself and not overthink, okay, well, here are these, for example, for our graduate program, we had other people in the group that were engineers, they were salesmen, they were financial consultants. So they're pretty polished, and I was too, but at the same time, I knew that I had a small difference. So it really it was a great growing period for me. I think I really was able to at that point learn about myself in terms of how I can function, in a group of people that are business minded. And also I think it just taught me that, you know, at that point, I was probably around uh, 28, 29, going to grad school. So I think at that point, from what I had learned, going through grade school, going through high school, going to undergrad, I think just taking all that, it really was the next step in my development, as a person, as a person with Mobius, and as a person just in general. So overall, it was a great experience. I really learned a lot, not only about business, but also myself. And I learned that, hey, I can hang with other people that are in business, and I've done pretty well for myself. So I think it's just overall it's been a great experience. And then to touch on your question about dating and those kind of thing, that kind of thing. So to go back a little bit, so back in junior high, back in high school, I really didn't date. And looking back, they say hindsight's 2020. So looking back, I think if I would have been just a little more willing to just go for it and just try things and just talk to people, I might have had a different result. But at the time, I was just really, really a shy kid, and I didn't really understand myself yet. So I wasn't quite there in terms of asking a girl out, or trying to develop some kind of dating relationship with someone else. So
I I
so yeah,
think
you know,
yeah, I think you just described everybody that's ever gone through school that always looks back and goes, "Man, if I had only been a little more, confident or a little more whatever." So I think you're right there with everybody else.
right, exactly. And that's a good point because honestly, dating itself is hard no matter who you are. So yeah, I mean, um, looking back, I mean, that was definitely my thought process, but just in terms of going through high school, going to college, getting into the workforce, I did eventually date, and I feel like yeah, of course, I think initially people tend to have to get to know me a little better at first because they might wonder about my facial difference. I think ultimately it really is about just being okay with yourself and showing that to others, and they tend to be okay. And then from there, it's kind of just another day, I guess, and just another experience.
Now, did you find that there are a lot of misconceptions people have about you because of Mobius?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's yeah, I'd say definitely, and I think our community would agree as well. But yes, I'd say for instance, I think initially people tend to, for example, when I was in I think fourth, fifth grade, my teachers, most of them were great, but I had a couple that were sometimes they would just kind of make remarks, or they would just pull me aside and just kind of make sure I was doing okay in my schoolwork, and if I needed any extra attention. And usually I didn't because I was an okay student. But I think just those kind of things, they people were curious, so they just didn't know about Mobius, and why I'm seem different. So I think those kind of things were important to just get over for myself and just kind of push through. And beyond that, another example is as I was older, I remember one time I was working out at the gym, and this guy working out kind of next to me kind of stopped and looked at me and just said, "Oh, good job, buddy," and just in a very weird way because there I was with other people my age, just doing the same thing that they were, but I was singled out because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure why. Maybe he was just being a nice guy, but at the same time, I feel like I've had those kind of experiences where people tend to single me out, and it's because they might think I'm just different in whatever way they think. But yeah, it definitely happens here and there.
Yeah, that's really common. I know I get that. I get people think that I'm angry or that I'm drunk, or some people will think that people with a facial difference are slow,
Right.
that sort of thing. So yeah, it's always fascinating that people, what their perception of you is just based on your looks. So I have another question. I know you're into a lot of hobbies and activities, and what do you say to people who are afraid to pursue things outside because of facial paralysis or a facial difference?
I'd say, in my experience, really the hardest part is just taking that step to actually try out a hobby, for example, or just do what you want to do. Because in my experience, once you're there doing it and you're enjoying yourself, or you're with a group and you're involved, I think at that point, it's kind of the hard part's done. At that point, you're doing it, you're enjoying yourself, and you're actually in the moment. So I think that it's important to really just not overthink, and to not let your thoughts or your notions about what people might think or might say stop you from enjoying what you want to enjoy. Because for example, I think for me, and even now, as much as I've grown, as much as I've gone out and done things and traveled and all that, I still have moments where I want to go out and do an activity, or go out and just enjoy a night with friends. And I might feel like a little anxious about the environment, or just if I might see someone who might make a comment about me, or something along those lines. But no, at the end of the day, I think just doing it will allow the person to learn so much about themselves. And I think the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then it's at one point you're going out all the time and you're enjoying yourself, and it's just an afterthought.
You mentioned about people possibly making comments. How do you deal with that when that does happen?
Yeah, so really, I really had to, as far as me now, I definitely handle it differently than I used to before. When I was younger, I'd say, maybe under 18, under 20 years old, I just used to really not like when people would ask about, Mobius, or just make a comment like, "Oh, what happened to you?" or this or that. So yeah, I used to really not enjoy that at all. But actually, at some point, I realized that it's a chance for me to educate someone about Mobius, and to let them know that what it is, because maybe at some point they might meet somebody else that has the same thing or a similar condition. So it just it lets them know that number one, it's nothing that's it's a very personal thing to tell someone a condition that you have, or a condition that you've had from birth. So I think for me, it just really comes down to knowing that you're letting them understand a little more about you, but also it lets you kind of, for me at least, it lets me kind of I call it self medicate. So I kind of the more I tell people about it, the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, okay, well, this is me letting the world know what Mobius is. And that's pretty cool, because that's one of my goals, is to bring awareness to the condition, and bring awareness to our community. So I enjoy it now.
That's a great attitude and a great answer. And it's also something I'm very passionate about with the Ramsey Hunt syndrome, which is what I have, which is why I started this podcast first and foremost. And then I'm not sure if you're aware, I do stand up comedy. And so I talk about it on stage and try to raise awareness through that as well. So I think it's great that we have people that are getting out there and trying to educate the public, and let them know that there are these conditions out there and it's okay. And I just think the more people that we have out there who can do that, the better for us all. So I have a couple more questions for you. Now you're involved in the Moebius Syndrome Foundation. You're on the board of directors. How did you get involved in that?
So in 2014, I actually went to my first Mobius conference. It was in DC, and that was awesome, because that was the first time I had been in a room with so many others with Mobius. So not only did I make friends that I talk to even still today, but I learned a lot about resources and things about the condition that I didn't realize were even a thing. So that was just a really eye-opening, great experience for me. And since 2014, I had just kept in touch with friends, people that I had met that worked or volunteered with the foundation. So in 2018, there was a call for applications, and I just applied, told them why I wanted to be involved, and things worked out. And then I started my term in 2018, and yeah, ever since then it's been really cool. I've met a lot more people with Mobius, and um, just trying to do my part to help others.
That's awesome. Now, are there? I know there are a couple of upcoming events. There's the Moebius Syndrome Awareness Day, and that's January 24th. Is that correct?
Yes.
And are there any plans for that, or what is the goal behind that with the Moebius Syndrome Foundation?
Yeah, so really that's a community wide day that's celebrated, with people, by people with Mobius. So really what happens is, all over the country, and maybe even the world, people hold events. This can be things such as gatherings at venues where they get together and have lunch or dinner, and just network, and just have a nice time. You might have speakers that come by and give short presentations about resources for Mobius, and then you might have school age children that they have their classrooms hold special parties for Moebius syndrome. The kids might share Moebius with their classmates, and they'll learn about the condition some more. And then yeah, really it's just up to each individual. I would say in the U.S. there's several areas that have a condensed population of people with Moebius, so they trying to get together. I know there's one in Texas, California, New York. And so really it's just a day that celebrates Moebius, and it's a day that people can choose however they want to bring awareness to Moebius, and it's kind of like our holiday, I guess, if you will. So yeah, so I mean, and lastly, the I guess the theme is everybody wears purple, so like a purple shirt, purple jacket, or what have you, and yeah, it just it's been around for a while now, and I think it's really great for us.
Now, if somebody wanted to create an event for Awareness Day, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. So actually, yeah. So our website, which is mobiussyndrome.org, they can go on there, and there is a specific page. I want to say it's titled Awareness Day, and there's resources, and there is, I believe, there should be a contact information for our representative who can give more information as far as if they want to hold if someone wants to hold an event somewhere, or if they want some resources. I'm, I believe the foundation provides pamphlets and some other materials to hand out on Awareness Day. So yeah, definitely go to the website and you can find information.
And what was that website one more time?
Sure. So it's Moebius syndrome. That's Moebius syndrome
And then I know that there's also a convention coming up in July.
Yeah, so that's going to be so every 2 years we have a national convention, and this year it's going to be in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I believe July 17th through July 19th. And yeah, that's where the foundation holds the biggest conference of the year. It's a place where people can get together, network, meet each other. There's speakers about things such as speech, about facial reanimation surgery. There's everything from surgeons to eye specialists to therapists that are there, and yeah, it's a really great time. It's I think for me going to my first one in 2014, it's really great to meet others, and I think anyone who goes will find themselves changed afterwards.
That sounds like an amazing time. Is that also something you would go through mobiussyndrome.org to find out about?
Yes, definitely. If you go on the website, you there should be a page that says Mobius Conference 2020, and if you search through Google Mobius Syndrome Foundation Conference 2020, it should pull up the page for you. So yeah, definitely go there and check it out.
Awesome. So yeah, I think that's it for questions. And I just want to say, Steven, thank you so much for your time today and for the information. And if people want more information, they can go to mobiussyndrome.org to find out about Awareness Day, to find out about the convention. And just want to say thanks again for taking the time and coming on.